Ewan, listen. I never betrayed you. I married him under a prenuptial deal, 3 years as his wife, in exchange for using his power to erase your loan shark debt and protect you and your mother. Ewan's eyes widened, shock piercing the haze. 1 a.m. Manhattan was like a gigantic dying beast, suffocating beneath a blinding white, icy blanket brought by the historic bomb cyclone snowstorm. The wind screamed through the gaps between skyscrapers, creating horrifying sounds like the wailing of thousands of lost souls. The temperature outside had plunged to minus 23 degrees Celsius, turning the world's most bustling city into an icy tomb, silent in a way that was deeply unsettling. Ewan sat hunched inside a glossy black Lincoln Navigator, parked tight against the curb of an empty street. The luxury SUV was the only thing left that hinted at a former golden age, yet now it felt no different from an iron cage, trapping him in the dead of winter. The warmth from the heater no longer seemed strong enough to drive away the cold seeping into his bones, or perhaps that cold came from the shattered wasteland of his own heart. In Ewan's hand was a turkey sandwich he had grabbed in a hurry at a gas station, now stone cold and hard as ice. He took a bite, forcing the bland, dry mouthful down into his churning stomach. His right hand scrolled across his phone screen, the weak blue light casting shadows over his gaunt, unshaven face. The banking app displayed a merciless number, $12.45. That was all that remained of a former Wall Street financial star who once treated a few $1,000s as pocket change. A sharp beep shattered the silence inside the car, a text message from an unknown number. Ewan squinted to read it, and his entire body froze. "You're out of time, Ewan. $50,000 before dawn, or I'll pay your mother a visit at the nursing home. She's old and frail. Cold weather doesn't suit her, does it?" The phone nearly slipped from his hand. Ewan's breathing grew rapid, each breath forming thick white clouds in the air. His fingers trembled, not from the blizzard raging outside, but from the overwhelming fear crushing his heart. His mother was the only family he had left, the final reason he kept dragging himself through this wretched life. But $50,000 before dawn? It was an impossible number. In absolute despair, Ewan reached up and flipped down the sun visor. A worn old Polaroid, its edges frayed and torn, was pinned there. In the picture, he and Isla were smiling brightly under radiant golden sunlight, her eyes filled with love and trust as she looked at him. 3 years had passed since that smile had gone out, since the day he lost everything, his career, his honor, and her. "I'm sorry," Ewan whispered hoarsely, his thumb gently brushing over the face of his ex-wife in the photo. There was no way back. Despite the lethal storm, despite his own exhaustion, he needed money. Ewan took a deep breath, swallowed the bitterness, and tapped the rideshare app icon. His finger pressed Go Online. The screen shifted to waiting mode. In a blizzard like this, only the insane or the desperate would be on the road, and Ewan, cruelly enough, was both. He sat there waiting for a chance, or more precisely, waiting for a miracle to save his life before dawn arrived. Inside the cramped space of the Lincoln Navigator, the silence grew so heavy that Ewan could hear his own heartbeat pounding, blending with the feral howl of the wind outside the windows. The phone screen remained lit, but no notification appeared. Every passing second felt like a knife slicing into his fragile hope. Dawn was approaching, and the threat from the mob hung over him like a death sentence. Suddenly, a sharp sound ripped through the stillness. Ting! Ewan jerked violently, almost dropping the phone. His eyes locked onto the screen. A new ride request had just appeared, glowing brightly against the dark interface. Service, Lux Black XL. Pickup, Per Se Restaurant, Columbus Circle. Destination, East Hampton, Long Island. Ewan's pupils contracted. East Hampton? In this weather? It was a journey of more than 90 miles east. Under normal conditions, it took about 2 hours, but with the bomb cyclone raging, icy roads and near-zero visibility, even leaving Manhattan was a gamble, let alone crossing wind-blasted highways all the way to the tip of Long Island. It was nothing short of a suicide run. Then, Ewan's eyes drifted downward to the flashing green number beneath it, indicating extreme surge pricing due to severe weather conditions. $1,500. $1,500 for a single ride. The number danced before his eyes, magnetic and seductive. It wasn't enough to cover the $50,000 debt, but it was a beginning. It was an oxygen tank for a drowning man. It could buy him time, or at least enough to hire someone to get his mother out of town temporarily. The seasoned driver in his head screamed at him to refuse, that no amount of money was worth his life in a deadly storm like this. But fear for his mother's safety drowned out everything. Before his mind could analyze the risks, Ewan's thumb, still trembling from cold and terror, reacted faster than his thoughts. He pressed hard on the green circle. Accepted. The screen switched to navigation mode. Fate had been sealed. Ewan tossed the half-eaten sandwich onto the passenger seat, adjusted the collar of his coat, and stepped on the gas. The Lincoln roared, plowing through the snow into the white night, heading toward Columbus Circle, unaware that it was driving straight into a nightmare far worse than the storm itself. The black Lincoln Navigator cut through waves of slushy snow, creeping into the drop-off area of the Time Warner Center, home to the famed Per Se restaurant. Warm yellow light spilled from the lobby, a stark contrast to the howling white blizzard outside. Ewan took a deep breath, trying to steady his erratic heartbeat. He pulled over as the wipers worked at full power, barely keeping up with the thin layer of ice constantly forming on the windshield. From inside the revolving doors, a doorman bundled in a thick overcoat struggled to guide two guests out into the freezing night. The wind shrieked, flinging knife-sharp snowflakes against their faces. Ewan squinted through the fogged glass to confirm the passengers. The moment his headlights swept across their faces, time seemed to stop. The entire world collapsed before his eyes, colder than the storm raging outside. The man was large and heavy-set, stumbling from drunkenness, wearing an expensive cashmere coat that hung crookedly on his body. It was Vance, the hedge fund billionaire whose name alone was enough to make Ewan's blood boil. And the woman beside him, wrapped tightly in a pristine white fur scarf, struggling to keep her balance on high heels, was Isla. Ewan went numb, his throat tightened, words refusing to come. She was his ex-wife. Isla was still beautiful, her elegance intact, yet now tinged with a heartbreaking weariness and resignation. Her eyes, once a vast ocean filled with love for him, were cast downward, avoiding everything around her. A jolt of electricity shot up Ewan's spine, not from the cold, but from the fear and crushing humiliation. If they recognized him, Ewan, once the legendary old wolf of Wall Street, now reduced to a desperate Uber Lux driver, his last shred of dignity would shatter completely. In a flash, Ewan grabbed the black baseball cap from the passenger seat and pulled it low, hiding his forehead and eyes. With shaking hands, he hurriedly put on a black face mask, covering his face almost entirely, leaving only a narrow slit to see the road. Still not satisfied, he reached up and tilted the rearview mirror at an angle, making sure his eyes and theirs would never meet through a reflection. Ewan's heart pounded so violently his chest ached, as if it were about to burst out of his gaunt frame. The rear door swung open. The stench of strong alcohol mixed with bone-deep cold flooded the cabin, signaling the beginning of a ride straight from hell. Vance collapsed heavily onto the back seat, dragging in a blast of freezing air mixed with a suffocating stench of cognac. He hurled his expensive Louis Vuitton leather carry-on onto the floor with brute carelessness, not bothering to see whether it scratched the interior or not. To Vance, everything around him existed only to serve him, and people were no exception. The alcohol and perhaps the lingering effects of stimulants had driven Vance into a sickly state of excitement. He refused to sit still, instead lunging forward and slamming his hand hard against the driver's headrest, making Ewan flinch. "Hey, you!" Vance shouted, his voice slurred, thick yet dripping with arrogance. "Are you deaf or what? Why didn't you get out and open the door? What kind of damn luck service is this?" Ewan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his fingernails digging so deeply into the leather wrap that his knuckles turned white. He forced down a trembling breath and gave a slight apologetic nod through the deliberately misaligned rearview mirror, determined not to utter a single word that might reveal his voice. Seeing the driver's silence, Vance sneered and leaned back, clearly pleased with that submission. He continued muttering, loud enough for the entire car to hear. "You'd better drive carefully. Roads are slick as grease. My life's worth more than your whole damn family put together. Scratch my skin even a little, and selling your house wouldn't be enough to pay for it." Isla entered the car right after him, a complete contrast to her husband's noise and vulgarity. She slid quietly into the seat, shrinking into her thick fur coat, trying to take up as little space as possible. She said nothing and didn't dare look at either Vance or the driver. Isla curled against the right side door, her beautiful yet sorrowful eyes fixed on the white darkness outside, as if she wished she could dissolve into the snowstorm itself and escape this suffocating cage. The car door slammed shut, sealing 3 people with 3 entirely different states of mind into an airtight space. Ewan swallowed hard, the bitter taste of humiliation rising in his throat. He pressed the accelerator. The heavy vehicle rolled forward, leaving Manhattan's lights behind as it plunged into the darkness of the highway, where the true nightmare was only just beginning. The Lincoln Navigator lumbered along Interstate I-495, heading east. Outside, the bomb Cyclone appeared to have reached the peak of its fury. Dense snow lashed against the windshield like tens of thousands of needles, forcing the wipers to operate at full speed just to maintain a hazy field of vision. Yet the chaos of nature outside was nothing compared to the thick, suffocating atmosphere pressing down inside the cabin. The heater hummed steadily, but Ewan felt a chill crawl down his spine. He had been reduced to an unwilling spectator in the cruel play of his own life. Vance, now fully soaked in alcohol, began to treat Isla's silence as an insult. He needed an outlet for his irrational irritation, and the wife sitting beside him was the perfect target. "So what the hell are you thinking about?" Vance suddenly broke the silence, his slurred voice laced with venom. He turned and stared hard at Isla. "That scarf you gave my mother tonight, where'd you buy it? A thrift store?" Isla startled, her shoulders trembling slightly. She kept her gaze on the window, replying in a small voice. "It's handmade silk, Vance. I had it custom—" "Handmade my ass," Vance cut her off, laughing crudely. "It looks like a damn kitchen rag from my house. My mother had to force a smile when she opened it. Didn't you notice? You embarrassed me in front of the entire family." Ewan bit down hard on his lower lip, tasting blood. He knew Isla's sense of taste, how refined it was. That gift must have been beautiful, but to a vulgar, nouveau riche brute like Vance, an object's value existed only in its flashy price tag. Vance wasn't finished. He reached out roughly, yanking Isla by the shoulder and forcing her to face him. "Listen up, porcelain doll. I married you, gave you a life of luxury, not so you could act like some country bumpkin. I bought you to be my decoration, to show you off. Got it? Don't ever make me lose face again." Every word Vance spoke cut like a knife into Isla's dignity and tore straight through Ewan's heart. "I bought you." The phrase echoed obsessively in Ewan's mind. In the eyes of that billionaire, the woman Ewan had once treasured like a priceless gem was now nothing more than merchandise, an expensive toy. The air inside the car seemed to be sucked away, making it hard for Ewan to breathe. He wanted to scream, to slam on the brakes and smash that man's face, but the image of his elderly mother in the nursing home and the life-or-death debt chained him to the driver's seat, forcing him to swallow his rage. As hatred and fear thickened the air, a shrill phone ring suddenly erupted, tearing through the night. Vance cursed under his breath, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out the latest model smartphone. Drunk and arrogantly lazy, he didn't bother holding it to his ear. He hit the speaker button and tossed it onto his thigh. "Talk, Mike. I'm listening," Vance slurred. The voice of his personal lawyer rang out clearly in the sealed cabin. "Mr. Vance, I'm calling with good news. The TechCorp takeover is complete. We crushed their stock price exactly as planned. The scenario played out perfectly, just like what you did to Ewan Wright's company 3 years ago." The name Ewan Wright struck the driver like a bolt of lightning. Ewan felt the blood in his veins turn to ice. His hands froze on the steering wheel for a split second. In the back seat, Vance burst into loud, savage laughter. He slapped his thigh. "Ha! I told you. Same old trick, but it never fails. Speaking of Ewan, that one was a masterpiece of mine." He lifted the half-finished bottle and took a long swig, then continued bragging into the phone, completely unaware that his victim was sitting less than an arm's length away. "That idiot thought his company went bankrupt because of market fluctuations," Vance sneered. "He had no idea I spent $2 million bribing the media to spread fake news, then short-sold his stock. I crushed him like a cockroach, Mike. I took his money, his reputation, and finally, I took his beautiful wife." He turned to look at Isla, his eyes gleaming like a predator's. By now, that Ewan's probably sleeping under some bridge or frozen to death in some alley. Losers like him don't deserve to exist in my world. At that moment, a sharp pain pierced Ewan's chest, followed by a surge of burning heat exploding inside him. His collapse, his poverty, his debts, and losing Isla, none of it had been fate. None of it had been his own incompetence. It had all been the result of the vile conspiracy of the man sitting behind him. Ewan clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles went bone white. His nails tore through the leather, piercing even the thin gloves, drawing blood. Blinding rage made his vision blur, but reason warned him not to act yet. Not now. Still, the brutal truth laid bare had transformed this ride from a desperate bid for money to a journey of judgment. Vance's shameless confession was the final straw, shattering the last fragile barrier of Isla's endurance. She had stayed silent for 3 years, swallowing every humiliation in exchange for a false peace. But hearing the man who destroyed the life of the one she loved most mock him so cruelly was unforgivable. "That's enough, Vance!" Isla's voice rang out, no longer trembling with fear, but sharp, packed with years of suppressed fury. She spun to face her husband, her eyes blazing. "You promised me you would never mention his name again," she hissed, breathing hard. "You ruined Ewan's life. You took everything from him, and now you sit here laughing about it? You're disgusting. You're a monster." For a split second, the car seemed to freeze. Vance stared at her, the grin vanishing from his face, replaced by a flushed mask of drunken rage. He couldn't believe that his obedient decoration dared to lecture him. "What the hell did you just say?" Vance roared, his voice hoarse with menace. Before Isla could react, Vance swung his arm. Smack! The dry, vicious sound cut through even the howling wind outside. The force of the slap sent Isla's head crashing into the seat. She clutched her left cheek, where a red mark immediately bloomed against her pale skin. Tears spilled from the corners of her eyes, but she bit down hard to keep from crying out. "Shut your filthy mouth!" Vance screamed, spit flying. He jabbed a finger at her face, his eyes bloodshot. "You're defending him, huh? You still hung up on that broke loser, aren't you?" He lunged forward, grabbing Isla by the fur collar and shaking her violently. "Listen carefully, bitch. I paid for you, married you, so you'd obey me and make me look good, not so you could judge me. You, your family, and your precious ex, you're all under my heel. Don't make me remind you of your place." From the driver's seat, Ewan watched everything through the rearview mirror. The slap that struck Isla felt like it landed straight on his heart. Rage erupted like a volcano, incinerating every thought of safety or debt. Ewan's eyes flooded with red veins. The beast inside him, silent for 3 long years, was awake now, roaring for justice. That slap seemed to be nothing more than a prelude, an opening note that awakened the demon rising inside Vance. The alcohol and stimulants had stripped away the last traces of humanity he had left. No longer satisfied with merely silencing his wife, Vance wanted to punish her, to grind that fragile defiance into dust. "You dare look at me like that?" Vance snarled, his voice thick with madness. He lunged across the seat, his large, coarse fingers clamping brutally onto Isla's golden hair. She screamed in pain, both hands clawing desperately at his grip, but it was useless. The strength of a slender woman was no match for a large man consumed by drunken rage. "Let me go! Vance, you're hurting me!" Isla sobbed, tears streaming down her face. But her cries only fueled the beast within him. With savage force, Vance yanked her head backward and slammed it hard against the car window. Bam! The dry, brutal sound of skull meeting icy, reinforced glass exploded inside the sealed cabin, sending a chill through Ewan's spine. Isla let out a heart-rending scream and went limp for a brief moment from the impact, her forehead pressed against the freezing glass as a thin line of blood began to seep from her temple. Ewan stared into the rearview mirror. The sight of the woman he had once sworn to protect with his life being savagely abused right before his eyes sent hot blood rushing to his head, pounding violently in his ears. Every cell in his body screamed in revolt. The rage surged so fiercely that it eclipsed even his fear of the gangster's debt, eclipsed even his instinct for survival. He could not endure it for even one more second. Money, debt, his own safety, everything became meaningless in that instant. Ewan ground his teeth together, his jaw bulging with fury. His eyes, once dull and worn, now burned with the fire of a wolf driven into a corner, ready to tear apart its enemy to protect its own. The Lincoln continued racing through the snowstorm, but the man behind the wheel was no longer a submissive Uber driver. He had made his decision. In that decisive moment, time seemed to slow for Ewan. Vance's screams and Isla's sobs faded into the distance, replaced by the cold, razor-sharp focus of a hunter. Ewan glanced at the driver's side control panel. His fingers moved swiftly and decisively, finding the button marked with a small lock icon, child lock. Click. A small mechanical sound rang out, nearly swallowed by the howling wind, but to Ewan it was the sound of a steel cage slamming shut. The back seat had now become a prison with no escape. Vance would not be able to open the doors from the inside once he realized something was wrong. Ahead, the headlights swept over a blurred green road sign in the blizzard, pointing toward a little-used exit. It led to the outskirts of the Pine Barrens, a vast, desolate pine forest reserve in New Jersey, known as a deadland in winter due to its absolute isolation. No surveillance cameras, no residents, and tonight, no witnesses. Ewan took a deep breath and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. Without a slightest hesitation, he jerked the wheel sharply to the right. The 2-ton Lincoln Navigator lurched violently. The tires screeched as they clawed at the frozen asphalt, sliding into a dangerous drift. The sudden force flung Vance and Isla sideways across the back seat. "You're insane! What the hell are you doing?" Vance roared, releasing Isla's hair to grab the overhead handle, his face drained of color from the sudden turn. "This isn't the road to the Hamptons! Turn back right now!" Ewan didn't answer. He floored the accelerator. The V6 engine roared like a beast unleashed from its chains. The car shot off the highway, leaving behind the faint glow of civilization as it plunged headlong into the thick, pitch-black darkness of the pine forest. Trees flashed past like towering specters. The uneven snow-covered dirt road sent the vehicle shaking violently, yet Ewan held the wheel with terrifying steadiness. He was driving his enemy into the land of judgment, where Vance's money and power would mean nothing against the law of the wild and the fury of a man with nothing left to lose. The shriek of tires tore through the frozen silence as Ewan slammed on the brakes. The Lincoln skidded across the ice, its rear swinging wide before coming to a dead stop in a lethal clearing surrounded by towering pitch-black pines of the Pine Barrens. The engine shut off, surrendering the space to the wind's wailing screams like wandering souls. Inside the car, Vance was thrown forward, then slammed back into the rear seat, his head spinning. Enraged, he pounded his fist against the window, trying to fling the door open and teach the driver a lesson, but it wouldn't budge. "Open this door! What the hell did you lock?" Vance bellowed, his face flushed crimson with fury. "I'll sue you! I'll rot you in prison!" Ewan paid no attention to the hollow threats. He unbuckled his seatbelt, his movements slow, yet radiating a chilling calm. Drawing in a deep breath of the icy air seeping through the cracks, he pushed the door open and stepped into the storm. The minus 23 degrees Celsius cold hit him instantly, slashing into his skin like knives, but the fire of hatred burning inside him with enough to incinerate any numbness. He walked around to the back of the car, his boots crunching ominously in the snow. Ewan yanked hard on the rear door handle on Vance's side. The door flew open. Vance was about to rush out when a hand hard as cold steel clamped onto the collar of his cashmere coat. Before he could react, a brutal force dragged him out of the warmth of the luxury vehicle. "Hey, let go of me!" Vance screamed, but it was useless. His bloated, alcohol-soaked body was hauled like a sack of trash and hurled straight into the thick snow. He fell face first, the bone-deep cold shocking him sober. Vance scrambled to his feet, brushing snow from his face. He turned, ready to unleash the vilest string of curses he could muster. Then the words froze in his throat. Under the dull yellow glow of the headlights cutting through the darkness, he saw the driver standing tall. Gone was the earlier hunched, fearful figure. The man before him now radiated a suffocating killing intent, like a grim reaper waiting to pass judgment. The storm wind howled as if tearing the world apart, yet Ewan stood motionless, like a rock in a raging flood. The headlights cast directly against his back, throwing a long, dark shadow that swallowed Vance, who was struggling on the ground. Without a word, Ewan slowly raised his hand. First, the worn black baseball cap fell onto the white snow. His disheveled hair, streaked with gray from hardship and worry, was exposed to the raging wind. Next, he ripped off the black mask covering half his face and tossed it aside, discarding the final shell of his endurance. Under the cold, merciless light of the headlights, the driver's true face was revealed in full. A gaunt, weathered face with high cheekbones and deep lines etched around the eyes, the brutal marks of 3 years spent sinking at the bottom of society. But those eyes blazing with hatred and pain, still belonged to the man who had once stood at the peak of glory. From the back seat, Isla, trembling as she clung to the doorframe, froze. She raised a hand to cover her mouth, stifling a sob. Her heart seemed to stop beating. No matter how broken the man before her looked, she recognized him instantly. He was the man she had loved, the man she had been forced to leave to protect. "Ewan?" Her voice was swallowed by the wind, fragile and stunned, but it was loud enough for Vance to hear. The billionaire squinted, trying to peer through the snow and blinding lights. He sniffed, and suddenly a twisted smile crept across his bloated face. He recognized him now. This wretched bastard was the old enemy he thought he had crushed beneath his heel. "Oh," Vance drawled, a sick fascination gleaming in his eyes. He brushed snow from his coat and tried to straighten up, reclaiming a shred of authority, despite his legs trembling from cold and drink. "Well, look who it is. Quite the touching reunion, huh? So you didn't starve to death after all, Ewan." Vance stepped closer, shoving his face right up to Ewan's, his voice dripping with challenge and contempt. "What are you going to do to me?" Vance spat at Ewan's feet. "Kill me? You don't have the guts, Ewan. You're just a coward, a miserable failure. 3 years ago you didn't dare touch me, and you won't now." Vance's provocation was the final drop of oil poured onto the raging fire. Ewan clenched his fists, and this time he knew he would not step back. Vance's taunt was the final drop that made the glass overflow, detonating the gunpowder that had been compressed deep inside Ian's heart. He let out a roar filled with pain and rage and charged straight at Vance like a wounded beast. Ian's punch landed squarely on Vance's jaw, but the difference in physical strength was far too great. Ian was gaunt, exhausted from hunger and cold, while Vance was massive and bloated like a giant bear. The billionaire only staggered slightly before swinging back. A heavy punch crashed down, sending Ian flying backward, blood bursting from his nose and staining the white snow red. Ian struggled to get back up, but Vance had already lunged forward and kicked him hard in the stomach, making him curl up in agony. Vance stood towering over Ian, his breath blowing out in white clouds. He reached inside his thick coat, but not to grab a phone. A gleam of dark, polished metal flashed under the headlights. A cold, Sig-Sauer pistol rested firmly in his hand. "I'm sick of this game," Vance hissed, his eyes bloodshot. He did not aim the gun at Ian. Instead, he slowly turned the barrel toward Isla, who stood frozen beside the car door. "I'll kill both of you." A perfect script. The wife cheating with her former driver, the two of you attacking the husband to steal his assets, and the husband forced to defend himself. I'll be the poor victim again. "No, Vance, don't!" Isla screamed, throwing her hands out in front of her. Vance curled his lips into a cruel smile, his index finger tightening on the trigger. Bang! The gunshot thundered through the silent pine forest like a bolt of lightning, but Isla did not fall. In that split second between life and death, driven by a superhuman strength that shattered all physical limits, Ian sprang up and threw himself in front of Isla. The bullet that should have pierced her heart slammed straight into his chest. Ian's entire body jerked violently. He fell backward, sprawled across the snow. Fresh blood poured out, blooming into a vivid and tragic red flower across the cold white ground. "Ian!" Isla screamed, her voice tearing apart the night. Watching the man she loved collapse, fear vanished from Isla, replaced by the wild fury of a woman pushed into a corner. While Vance was still stunned by the sight of Ian taking the bullet, Isla grabbed the tire iron that Ian had dropped nearby when he opened the trunk. With all the strength she had, she swung the metal bar and smashed it down on the arm holding the gun. Vance howled in pain as the pistol flew into the bushes. Without stopping, Isla lunged forward and shoved her brutal husband hard. Losing his balance on the slick, icy ground, Vance fell backward and tumbled into the deep, snow-filled drainage ditch beside the road. At that exact moment, a piercing siren echoed from the distance, ripping through the dense pine branches. Red and blue lights flashed through the dense pine branches. Ian had secretly activated the car's emergency SOS system the moment he turned into the forest. Help had arrived, but was it already too late for him? The Pine Barrens forest, once silent as a grave, was now thrown into chaos by blaring sirens and relentless red and blue flashes. Police officers and rescue teams stormed in like a second raging storm. From the snowy ditch, Vance was dragged out roughly, his arms wrenched behind his back and snapped into handcuffs. He thrashed wildly, screaming himself hoarse. "Let me go! I'm Vance! I'm a billionaire! They tried to kill me! I was just defending myself!" But no one paid any attention to the excuses of a man reeking of alcohol and gunpowder. A few steps away, another battle was being fought, one far more desperate, the fight for a life. Paramedics rushed Ewan onto a stretcher. Blood continued to seep from his chest, soaking through his clothes and staining the white sheet crimson. His breathing was faint, like thin wisps of smoke, his unfocused eyes staring up at the blinding lights of the ambulance ceiling. The biting cold and the searing pain slowly gave way to a soft, creeping numbness. Ewan thought he was dying. Images of his aging mother and the unpaid debt flickered through his mind like a slow-motion film. "Ewan, look at me! Don't close your eyes!" Isla's voice rang beside him, sobbing and frantic. She sat next to him, gripping his icy, blood-soaked hand, not caring about how disheveled she looked. "I'm so tired, Isla," Ewan whispered, the corner of his lips lifting into a faint, sorrowful smile. "I'm sorry for not being able to save the company, for not being able to keep you." "No, none of this is your fault," Isla cried, hot tears streaming down onto his pale face. She knew she had to tell the truth right now, or she would never get another chance. She leaned close to his ear, her voice breaking through sobs. "Ewan, listen to me. I never betrayed you. I married him because of a prenuptial contract. He promised that if I stayed his wife for 3 years, he would use his connections to wipe out your debt to the loan sharks so they would stop threatening you and your mother." Ewan's eyes opened a little wider, shock cutting through the haze. Isla squeezed his hand even tighter, as if trying to pour all her life into him. "Today, there's only 1 week left until the contract ends. I've endured 3 years of hell just to buy your freedom. I did everything to save you, so you can't die. You can't leave me after everything we've been through. Ewan, please." Every word from Isla struck Ewan's heart like a powerful electric current. She had never left him. The coldness, the distance, the glamorous marriage, it was all the greatest silent sacrifice she had made for him. Tears spilled from the corners of Ewan's eyes, hot and bitter. He could not die. He was not allowed to die. He had to live, to make it up to this woman. His will to survive ignited more fiercely than ever, pushing back the darkness that was closing in. The heart monitor, which had been beeping in weak, irregular tones, suddenly became steady and strong. The vital signs on the screen slowly stabilized, to the astonishment of the medical team. Ewan gently squeezed Isla's hand, a wordless promise that he would fight to the very end. Inside an interrogation room at the New York Police Department, cold white fluorescent lights shone down on a bare metal table. Vance sat there, his hands tightly cuffed to the chair. The alcohol had completely worn off, leaving behind a sharp, calculating, and cunning clarity. Despite his disheveled appearance, the torn cashmere coat, and the bruised, swollen face, he still carried the arrogance of a man who had never bowed to the law. "I won't say another word until my lawyer, Mike, is here," Vance snarled, glaring at the detective across from him. "You're making a huge mistake. I'm the victim. Those 2 lunatics kidnapped me, dragged me into the woods to extort me. When I refused, the driver attacked me. I had no choice but to pull my gun in self-defense. That's my civil right." The detective, a middle-aged man with a calm, steady expression, showed no reaction to the billionaire's threats. He slowly flipped through the case file, then deliberately placed a small object on the table. A black SD memory card. "Mr. Vance, your story sounds very logical," the detective said evenly. "Unfortunately, it's missing one very important thing, the truth." Vance frowned, staring at the memory card. "What the hell is that?" "This is data extracted from the dual 4K Dashcam installed on the Lincoln Navigator. As you know, high-end service vehicles like that are always equipped with a 24/7 security monitoring system, recording both exterior footage and interior audio, and the sound quality is excellent." The laptop screen lit up. The video began to play. Vance's face drained of color as he saw himself on the screen. Everything appeared with brutal clarity, from the moment he violently assaulted Isla, smashing her head against the window, to the instant he bragged on the phone about how he had used dirty tricks to crush Ewan's company 3 years earlier. Every arrogant confession, market manipulation, bribing the press was captured in full, not a single word missing. Then came the horrifying ending. He was seen pulling out the gun himself, aiming it at his own wife, declaring that he would kill both of them to stage the scene. The gunshot, Ewan throwing himself in front of Isla, all of it was undeniable evidence. "No, that's impossible," Vance stammered, cold sweat pouring down his forehead. He had trusted his power too much and forgotten that technology does not lie. Attempted murder, assault of a woman, large-scale financial fraud, stock market manipulation. The detective read out the charges, his voice striking like a sledgehammer. "No matter how good your lawyer Mike is, he can't save you, Vance. You're finished." Vance collapsed completely. He slumped forward, his head dropping onto the table, his shoulders shaking violently. The arrogance vanished, leaving only the pitiful image of a condemned man facing the sentence of his life. Justice had come late, but it had come in the most fitting way. Time passed, washing away painful memories the way ocean waves erase footprints in the sand. 1 full year had gone by since that storm-filled, fateful night. In the Florida Keys, the sky stretched high and deep blue, not a single cloud in sight. Golden sunlight danced across the surface of the sea, creating shimmering silver-streaked reflections. This warm, peaceful scene stood in stark contrast to the deadly cold of the New York snowstorm long ago. On the fine white sand, Ewan was carefully repainting the hull of a small tour boat. His skin had turned a healthy bronze from the sun and sea breeze. He wore simple shorts, bare-chested, revealing firm muscles and a long, pale pink scar running along the left side of his chest. It was the mark of the bullet from that night, but now, to him, it was no longer a source of pain. It was a medal of courage and love. Ewan's hand carefully traced turquoise letters along the side of the boat. The Isla. "Take a break for a bit." The sweet voice behind him made Ewan turn around. Isla walked toward him, holding 2 glasses of freshly squeezed cold orange juice. She wore a light floral maxi dress, her golden hair fluttering in the sea breeze. Gone was the frightened woman wrapped in an expensive fur coat. Now Isla radiated vitality and brightness. Her eyes sparkled with joy, something Vance's money had never been able to buy. Ewan took the glass, drank a cool sip, then pulled Isla into his arms. "What do you think? Is the boat name nice?" "It's beautiful," Isla smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "But I still prefer being your owner more than being the name of a boat." They both burst into laughter. They were no longer powerful figures on Wall Street, no longer dressed in $1,000 suits or attending lavish Michelin-star dinners. The reward money from exposing the crime and the compensation had helped them pay off all their debts and buy this small seaside home. Life was simple now, but free and strangely peaceful. A gust of sea wind flipped over a copy of the Miami Herald lying on a wooden table nearby. In a small corner of the legal news section, a bold black headline stood out. "Former hedge fund tycoon Vance sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder and large-scale financial fraud. Appeal denied." Ewan glanced at the headline, then calmly looked away, as if it were nothing more than news about a storm that had passed long ago. The dark past had truly been sealed behind prison bars. "What are you thinking about?" Isla asked softly, her fingers tracing absent circles on his arm. Ewan set the glass down and gently kissed her forehead, the place that had once borne the deepest emotional wounds. He looked toward the distant horizon, where sea and sky met. "I'm thinking about the 0 mile," Ewan whispered. "That night I thought I had reached the end of the road, but it turned out to be the starting line. We lost everything to find each other again, and that was the most profitable investment of my life." Isla tightened her grip on his hand, her eyes glistening with happy tears. They stood there together, hand in hand, letting the sea wind tangle their hair, filling their lungs with the salty scent of freedom. Ahead of them lay no more snowstorms, only a vast ocean of new beginnings.